Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome again to the ICD. I would like to thank also Mark Donfred, our director and founder, for the great presentation and introduction and actually setting the tone for cultural diplomacy in the Arab world. And yes, I agree a lot with you, Mark, about how important is cultural diplomacy, especially for the Arab world, but also for the rest of the world. We are definitely way more interconnected as nations than we believe. And I think the Arab world and the Arab nation has been subject to a lot of deformation and a lot of stereotypes and cliches in the media. And therefore, the need for communication and the need to understand the others' values, and also tell our stories, that I'm sure that when the rest of the world will hear it, we'll find a lot of similarities because our stories are based on values, cultural values, and the human values of openness, hospitality, tolerance, and respect. And if anything, our story is told about a resilient ability to live together in peace and prosperity for so many long years ago. And that's why today I will be talking about targeting cultural diversity in the Arab world and why the radical movements are actually targeting our heritage and what do they mean by targeting our heritage and why they are targeting this heritage and this very specific diversity, whether in Iraq, whether in Syria, whether in Yemen or in other countries. In the Arab world, there is a specific target on heritage and it is in purpose somehow. In order to do this, in this presentation, I'll be speaking about the Arab diverse and rich cultural heritage and the reasons, as I said, behind this targeting this heritage and the destruction of this heritage. And what do they really, the terrorist wants to say, as I said. And in order to do so, I will be starting with a short introduction. Then I will talk about cultural heritage and its values and meanings. Then I will talk about cultural diversity and its importance to us, Arabs, but also to the rest of the world. And I will look closely at the Arab world. I mean, thanks also for Mark because he defined the Arab world. He talked a lot about things about the Arab world will make my presentation a bit easier for me and also for you to follow. And then I will discuss like what happened when this identity, the identity, also Mark talked about identity and also like when you want to look at that identity in the Arab world, like how can we say 22 countries with one identity and how can we find a shared identity that will not dismiss the identity and the uniqueness of also the other tribes and communities and the diversity that is represented in the Arab world. And then I will definitely conclude with some remarks and analysis. So let's start. By first discussing how humans interact with cultural heritage. And as we know, people are not only individuals, just random individuals. People, beliefs, values, views, and abilities are shaped and sustained within social groups, families, and communities. And that people's intrinsic paradigm allows the creation and the ability to influence both trends in behavior that transcends into what we have today as cultural heritage. So targeting cultural heritage and its diversity is an attack on people's set of values, beliefs, views, and abilities to live together. So, cultural heritage, what is it? What do we mean by cultural heritage? Is it tangible and cultural? Is it natural and intangible? And what values does the heritage provide us with? To which problems or solutions can it contribute? Especially when we are facing globalization, wars, financial crisis all over, and how can it be relevant to our process of peace building? Well, cultural heritage is, as we say, it's not stones and buildings. It's more, at least in my study, in my field of studies, in my direction, it's not about the stones and the buildings. It's rather about identities and belongings. And actually, it is an expression or representation of cultural identity on society in a particular period. It's definitely contributing to community cultural capital. And if we want to define it more precisely, one of my favorite definitions of cultural heritage, at least within this context, is the Faro Convention in 2010, where they defined cultural heritage as a group of resources inherited from the past, and again, resources and not monuments and not buildings and not stones. It's resources. And we inherit from the past that people identify independently of ownership as a reflection and expression of their constantly evolving values, beliefs, knowledge, and traditions. So, in this case, as I said, what does cultural heritage provide us with? We can say a lot about that. It's like can provide us with identities, a web of meanings, cultural significance, links to a space and a place, a sense of belonging, options, diversity, respect, understanding, and also equality. It can also provide us with education, jobs, investments, and economic development. It can lead us to assimilation, absorption, and integration, but also it can lead us to independence, resistance, and isolation. So is it a problem or a solution? If we want to put this understanding of cultural heritage and add to that the layer of diversity, so basically let's see like what is cultural diversity. I specifically choose this picture here. It's actually from the long street in Old Damascus, and in this picture you can notice definitely the Roman arch. It's part of the Damascus old heritage that we live in Damascus and walk around all the time. We see also the church with the cross from one part, and we see a minaret from a mosque from the other part, and that's what we do. And this is how we live, on these layers of heritage, on these levels of cultures. And this is how also cities are created in the Middle East and in the Arab world, with a lot of layers of civilizations and with contemporary identities, different identities, but also shared identities, living together in one place. So for us to understand cultural diversity, we need to ask, I prefer usually to ask questions more than say statements, because the work of identity, the work of heritage, the work of culture, and the relation to the contemporary social studies, I prefer to raise the questions and start thinking rather than having something ready, because there is no something ready for us, and identities is in progress, as well as the research in this field is in progress. So part of the questions that I raise, is it really a common heritage of a humanity? Is it the uniqueness and plurality of identities of the groups and societies making up humankind? Is it source of exchange, innovation, and creativity? And more important, is it really necessary in our world? Well, I think cultural diversity is manifested not only through the many ways in which the cultural heritage of humanity is expressed, augmented and transmitted through the variety of cultural expressions, but also through diverse modes of artistic creations, production, dissemination, distribution, and enjoyment, whatever the means and technologies used in that representation. Cultural diversity, the UNESCO has a specific attention to cultural diversity, therefore they have the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural expressions, and they stated there that cultural diversity refers to the diverse ways in which the cultures of groups and societies find expressions. And these expressions are passed on within and amongst groups and societies. And the same convention is defined also interculturality as it refers to the existence and equitable interaction of diverse cultures and the possibility of generating shared cultural expressions through dialogue and mutual respect. So basically, let's focus that diversity somehow can bring us the foundation to build up something sustainable in terms of us, humanity, living together in peace through dialogue, through mutual respect, through interaction, through partnership, and through participation. And therefore, cultural diversity reflects a range of societies with different religious traditions or cultural backgrounds living together or interacting with each other. Why am I saying so? Because I'm going now to the Arab world, and we have to see now with the Arab world how cultural diversity is represented and how it's important also for the Arabs to step one step further and talk to the rest with this rich and diverse heritage. So let's look at the Arab world. Here's the map of the 22 countries with the flags as well. And yeah, as my colleague said, the Arab world is such a large area. It's like about 5.25 million square miles between the Arab Gulf in the east and the Atlantic in the west. 22 states, more than 400 billion inhabitants, and as he said, mostly young generation. And therefore it's representing also a passage connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe. So basically geographical location is very, very important when we look at the Arab world somehow. And when we look at the Arab world and its diversity, let's face it, it's like contrasting environments. We talk about a huge area geographically. So we go from deserts to seas, mountains, big mountains, oceans, and rivers, Nile and Euphrates in the Arab world, you know. We have contrasting patterns of living. We have the urban living, but we have the rural, we have the agricultural whole culture, and we have the Bedouin. So a lot of patterns that we also share and live one by the other sometimes. We also are a mosaic of religions and ethnicities. Many connect the Arab world with the Islam, but it is a fact that the majority of the Arab world is Muslim in terms of religion, but that doesn't deny that in Syria alone we have 86 different religious groups as example, or that the majority in Lebanon is Christian Maronite and not Islam. So basically when we need to look at the Arab world, we have to look at all these layers, and therefore it's important to look at the Arab identity and to understand it. And again, I go back to the questions that I have it. Is it segmentary? How do we deal with these things? Is it patriarchal? Is it tribal? Is it religious? Is it dependent or underdeveloped? Again, one of the biggest accusations for Arabs is that, are we really only consumers? Are we really unable to produce on both the intellectual and physical level? And if yes, how did we reach this point? So, harsh, but it's there. And if we are talking about cultural diplomacy, I think in order to face as an Arab, I will let myself to put this question and to even discuss it and see if this is also something that the terrorists are trying to attack, you know, in order to stop us from being an intellectual, productive nation as well. We know that identities refer to sharing of essential elements that defines the character and the orientation of peoples and affirm their common needs, interests, and goals. And identities also help to recognize the importance of difference. Shared identities help potential building blocks of positive future of the Arab world, but then how to have shared identity without compromising the vast range of diversity in the Arab world, and that's something I also raised a little bit before. Arab society has many cultural emphasis. So we're talking about what to compromise, what to keep, how can we keep the sharing, how can we keep the uniqueness, and that especially that we have big things, the common and the shared, in terms of Islam, the Arabic language, but we have also the subcultures, patterns of living, social formation, religious and sectarian affiliations and ethnicities. We also have countercultures. I mean, we cannot forget about the alienated intellectuals. We cannot forget about the uprooted communities and the radical movement as well. They all are there in the Arab world. And if we want to add one layer to this and say, okay, this is how it is now, but if we look at our heritage, which is behind who we are now, is we can also look at a very diverse cultural heritage in the Arab world. At least more than 70 sites already inscribed at the UNESCO World Heritage List. We have a vast intangible cultural heritage as well, and our civilization goes at least back to 11,000 years. From Sumerians to Akkadians, Pharaohs, Assyrians, Babylonians, Amorites, Hittites, Arameans, Phoenicians, Greek, Romans, then Turks, Mongols, Arab, ending with the French and English mandates and many others. These are civilizations that comes and left its impact, and some are still there, you know. We have this exchange and expansion from the east to the west, or from the west to the east. We have the Phoenicians, like sailing the whole Mediterranean. Some theorists say they went to the Atlantic Ocean and reached even the US or the Americas. We have the Greek, who came in to us and expand to the east. The Romans, the same thing. A lot of cities in Syria are my own city, Latakia, is the name is coming from the Greek who created the city actually, and called Latakia as the name of the wife or the mother of, you know. You have the cross sites and the whole thing. I'm talking here only in terms of how culture can interact and how can be positive also, and we have to consider that. And then we have the Arabs going to the west, and we create the whole creation of Andalusia, and I'm sorry for the spelling mistake of that. And then also we can't forget the Silk Road. You know, having Spanish here who was objecting the way I wrote Andalusia. But we also have the Silk Road and how the Arab world was a passage for the Silk Road. Actually, Syria, at least Aleppo, was kind of a filter for the Silk Road, where all the goods has to be like filtered again and see, this is okay, this will go to Europe, and this will go to Africa as example. And the whole filtration of things and decisions are made in that part. But of course, the Silk Road is passing through a lot of Arab countries. I'm talking more about Syria because I'm Syrian and I'm specialized in the cultural heritage in Syria. That's why I'm bringing more examples of Syria. But of course, the Arab world, again, as we said, diverse, big, and has a rich heritage. Now we go to targeting cultural heritage. And conflicts happen in relation between individuals or groups. It's very important to understand the nature of conflict and how conflict happens, and then we can figure out also why the terrorists are doing what they are doing with us. Conflict, as I said, it's in relation between individuals or groups or even countries sometimes, when they have different goals and values. And this is very important. The value is very important here. And it is what results, real or imagined, of incompatible interests, goals, beliefs, or activities. Therefore, it's very important to know that targeting and the destruction of cultural heritage and targeting cultural heritage is a weapon to attack identities of others through the destruction of the tangible symbol, and in this case is the cultural heritage of their identities. So in case they want to attack us, the terrorists, because we have values of life, values of openness, values of tolerance, that they don't represent. They represent values of death, values of hate, values of isolation. The first thing they will try to attack us with is our tangible representation of these values, and the tangible representation in this case is cultural heritage. When this applies to the Arab world, then targeting our diverse cultural heritage is targeting our diverse realities as well, and the meanings of our present, while cutting the road to our future generation. Such destruction inflicts psychological harm, to be scientifically proven. Psychological harm, as it has direct implication on the collective memories of nations or groups, and definitely have a very long damage in the process of building identities. To conclude, targeting cultural diversity in the Arab world will lead to damaging on important pillars of region's overall development and well-being due to cultural heritage importance in education enhancement and in employment robust, threatening any peace possibilities in the region. Are you okay? Okay. Yeah. So basically threatening any peace possibilities in the region, as cultural diversity is a precondition for social inclusion, cohesion, reconciliation, and participation, limiting the Arabs as consumers away from creativity and innovation, and blurring the sense of belonging, and stopping any positive process towards building identities, disconnecting Arabs from their inherited open and tolerant values to create a culturally poor society, unable to respect and understand the religious and cultures of others, and also narrowing the range of options open to everyone, and stopping any attempts to achieve not only an economic growth, but also more satisfactory intellectual, emotional, moral, and spiritual existence. Therefore, I can conclude by saying accepting and respecting cultural diversity paves the way to dialogue among civilizations and cultures' respect and mutual understanding. And of course, I wanted to close not with images of broken heritage. I just wanted to show how diverse the Arab culture and heritage is. It not only belongs to the past, it also belongs to the future. It is also contemporary and modern, and we are definitely going to have a lot to share and to talk and use and mobilize in the path of cultural diplomacy in order to understand ourselves first, build better relations between Arabs amongst themselves better first, and then move towards it and talk to the rest of the world with these values. Thank you. So questions, comments? Okay. In case, yeah?
So it's, yeah, sorry, you can continue. Someone else want to take it?
Go on.
All right, so it's like, oh, all right.
If you can stand up and introduce yourself, will be wonderful as well.
My name is Ramlan from Syria. I just want to ask this picture which you presented for the woman in black, and this is not from Syria. This is from Iranian film.
From?
From Iranian film.
Okay, it might be. I just use it as a symbolic picture, and I didn't say it's from Syria.
What happened in Syria? So you
No, I didn't say what happened in Syria. ISIS was in Iraq too. Sorry.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah?
I would like to know, how does cultural diversity affect human development in Arab world?
Sorry, can you?
I would like to know, how does cultural diversity affect the human development in the Arab world?
How the cultural diversity affected the human development?
Human development in the Arab world.
Well, it's a good question actually, but let's take it into small pieces because it's really big terminologies here, like cultural diversity and human development. Well, if we look at how humans develop, it's about innovation, it's about creativity, it's about openness to accept also new ideas, to accept new things, and by living in a diverse world, by being diverse and being accepting the others in their different agendas and ideas and existence, this will open the way. I will give you an example. When speaking about, like, let's think almost 3,000 years before Christ, 2,000 years before Christ, the race to space was a race to writing. Writing and the languages were like the biggest thing at that time. And you have to think in that region, at least, in the Arab world, what's called now the Arab world. You have Mesopotamia and you have the Pharaohite, big civilizations we're talking here. And each one started to create ideas about writing. I'm not very sure, I'm not specialized in both, but think of it as one thought of it in a very holy way, that you need to be half God to learn 500 hieroglyphic, letters that I never managed to learn, by the way, at the university, impossible. And the second, but really, like, you need to be like a specific social standard in that old Egypt in order to be accepted to open to read these things. It was such a holy language. And because it will take you to eternity. So basically, whoever will write that, he has to, be having your control, control of your future, eternity, paradise imagined there. And the other one in the Mesopotamia was something like you have to be the priest of the king in order to be able to also read and write. And then you had the Phoenicians, who were like, we're just like that, small kingdoms, which are small cities, but we go trade and we want to do things and we want to sail across the Mediterranean and we need to communicate with the others. And why we do this? Let's create the alphabet and make things easier, make 22 letters and start communicate. And that's how I think knowledge has been democratized for humanity, is by bringing the possibility to read and write for everyone. And that was thanks to the innovation of alphabet. By the way, the alphabet was there. The Phoenician, both the Mesopotamian and the Egyptian had it, but they closed it. But that concept of diversity, that concept of openness that the Phoenician had at that specific moment made a revolutionary step in terms of humanity development. I hope that I gave you a symbolic example on how diversity and accepting and embracing diversity can lead us forward. So, Ricard, you had a question?
Yes, it's kind of against the spirit of what you said right now, but I'm still going to ask the question.
Please.
So, I'm reminded of what Freud said, and he said, I think, about the First World War, that we are not somehow pessimistic, or we don't feel really pessimistic for the First World War that happened, because it's not that the humans that were good have now become bad, but humans were always bad, They were just held down by civilization and by other norms. And in our core, we're just a band of murderers, he says. And to go to that, I think it's interesting to also draw parallel to cultural diplomacy here. If humans do not accept the other in their own core, and if this intolerant part can be easily activated by people who want to see some damage to the society or who pursue their own interests in that state or society, is it not better not to have diversity rather than to have diversity? For example, you do not see religious wars in Saudi Arabia because they're all, what are they, Sunni. You don't see religious wars in Iran because most of them are Shia, but you do see religious wars in Yemen because there are some Sunnis and there are some Shia. And I could give a lot of examples where diversity has led to conflict. So that's my question.
I even raised this question: would heritage bring us a problem, or gonna provide us with solutions? Yes, listen, Ricard, yes, human beings through that time, they showed a lot of dark signs, and this is something that we have to face, and that's what also my colleague Mark said, that we shouldn't hide behind that we are all butterflies and there's a rainbow and we are jumping above the rainbow and then the life is great and beautiful. It is also that we have really dark points in our history, and that is something that is there. Now, how to contain that? How to stop that? How not to repeat the same mistakes that we did before? Is it by killing everyone who is different? The very famous joke that I hate racism and black as example. That is exactly what you were saying. If in case they are only one group living together, then the life will be easy and peaceful. So let's make people like that. This is not the possibility. The reality, our reality, is this diversity. It's this. We cannot, especially at this moment. At least in the past, in order to travel, you need to spend I don't know how many days on a camel to move, or to spend I don't know how much money to buy the ticket of a. Now we live where we can travel every day, that we can study anywhere, that we have the internet there. You are open to communication, and you are more than ever interrelated to everybody. So basically, we definitely need to educate people. We need to build up the peace education, not only we wait till the conflict starts and then start to teach others to respect each other based on their differences, not necessarily agree with them, but at least accept them and let them be, you know? In case we can go further, that's amazing. And that's why we need cultural diplomacy, and that's why we need people who are educated people, people from different disciplinaries coming together and also talking to the other. I mean, also if we only talk to each other, that's not going to change the world. We have to go and really face where the problems are, where the wars are, and try to build up also this kind of culture. So yes, I agree with you. It's part of our humanitarian, whatever Freud said, nature, that we have some evil in it, which might be possible. But how much we can work on it, how much we can develop it, how much can we contain the bad thing, that's something that we are working on cultural diplomacy and in this institution, and I'm sure in many other places. Yes?
I agree with what he said, because I think the Arab world has a very, very big problem, because we never know how to work together. We're so busy with the wars, the internal wars, the religious wars, and we never know how to work together. We just know how to fight each other, and that's a very big problem with the Arabs, even together. For example, the Europeans know well how to work together. Other countries know how to contribute, how to coordinate,
cooperate.
but the Arabs, they always had a problem in working together and be a unity and stop fighting each other like religious wars, Sunni and Shia, and they're the same, they're Muslims, and they're fighting each other. And it's just too much conflict in the Arab world, and I don't know how, if this will go on, or maybe we can change it, I don't know. What do you think?
I'll tell you my personal opinion. I think, give us time, be nice with us. We just finished 400 years of Ottoman occupation, followed by a British-French mandate. It's been less than 60 years that we had our independence. Our realities is created through a will of the others. And we are dealing with that, no? We are dealing with that in a big time. It wasn't an issue Muslim, Sunni or Muslim, Shia 100 years ago. It wasn't. It is new and modern. It started actually after the problems in Iraq. And it started with the concepts of ready-made democracy emphasized by the West on us in a non-positive way. So basically, we are not yet free from international or external interference. And we are dealing with that. That's one layer. Second layer, we are a very passionate nation that we can fight over about the football game as much as we fight about food or about religion or about things like that. Third, I think we definitely, or actually not a third, it's the way to maybe make things easier on us is that we really need to learn how to establish a kind of culture of dialogue.
Yes.
And a culture of debate. Like if I debate with you, if I don't agree with you, it doesn't mean I hate you. Or I don't agree with you on many other things. I might agree with you on 70%, but disagree completely on 30%. And that doesn't change the fact that I do respect you, I do believe in you as a entity, as a group, or as a person, or as a something. And then, but I'm kind of optimistic. I'm in general an optimistic human being. And I believe that the new generation are different. And that we will find a way to bring our differences, not bring them aside, bring them on the table. And say, okay, guys, we are different. Yes, you pray standing, I pray sitting, you go to the church, I go to the mosque. And this, okay, so what? Now, we can kill each other. This is a possibility, and this is not going to finish. Everybody will lose, or we will have to know how to deal with it. Sometimes conflicts, believe me, are, regardless how negative they are, they might bring a good positive change on a long term. And maybe we need to learn, I'm at least talking about Syria, we need to learn it the hard way, because before in Syria, we're talking about diversity in religion, it's a taboo. Like, who talks about that? What a shame. We are such an open-minded, we refuse the word tolerance. We say no tolerance, it means we have something against you. But we are not tolerant because I accept you completely. I am there. I mean, I'm your citizen, and I don't think of your religion or your ethnicity or something. But then they are fighting. I mean, I refuse to call it civil war, but still many layers of it is with the dynamics of civil war. And whoever agendas manage to get Syrians involved based on these differences. So no, maybe it's good. Maybe it's good to bring it on the table and see how we can really make things very bad and ugly. And maybe now we learn how to open a nice dialogue. Instead of me being ashamed to ask about your religion, it might be okay if I ask you, but still that doesn't change the fact that you are who you are and I am who I am, and then still we have something in common. So it's really difficult not to be optimistic, because we cannot change who we are. We are Arabs. I mean, at least I'm talking about the Arab community in this room, and we have not to be ashamed of that. We don't need to hide under a new nationality or a nice name or a lot of education. We have to face the fact that we have this layer, which is somehow itchy, but we have to figure out how to deal with it, develop it to something that is relevant. Yeah, I mean.
It's not a question, it's just a comment about the debate.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit, or I think it's very unfair to make this judgment about the Arab world in general. I don't think Arabs are not cooperative or they don't like each other. Okay, I'm not.
I didn't say not like each other.
Yeah, but they fight a lot. Okay, that's true.
I'm
And
just saying
it's a
there's so
problem.
much conflict going on, fighting each other over like religious things and things
But
that
we can
they
work
shouldn't be
together.
fighting over.
Teresa?
Okay,
That's the
but
whole-
it's not like we can't work together. I think it's after the Ottoman Empire and the politics of, or the policy of divide and conquer. It made many problems, and it made people less tolerant toward each other in the Arab world. So, for example, I talk about Palestine. We have Jews, Muslims, and Christians living together before the Ottoman Empire and before the establishment of Israel. So after the British colonization and then the French colonization in Syria and Lebanon, all these problems started.
Exactly, this is what I was saying here.
Because of the colonization. So I think it's unfair to make this judgment, but it's gonna take time. And I do confess also that we have a cultural problem also, that we don't communicate very efficiently. And yeah, we are not as tolerant as we should be. But I'm against, making this judgment or saying that someone in his essence or in her essence, and for Arabs like essentialism, that these people have a bad, essence. So I'm against this point of view. That's it.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure you can continue discussing in the coffee breaks. I think the time is running, but I see hands, so can we do it like quick? I will take many questions and I will answer, try to combine.
Mine is a comment, not a question.
But can you, yeah.
It is just one sentence.
I will hear it, I'm sure. Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yeah.
Just a quick question about cultural heritages. I'm curious, what are your views on how to best preserve cultural heritage sites, especially when all these conflicts in the Middle East will hopefully subside soon? Do you think it's something that has to be internationally coordinated, or do you think the Arab world has to come together and preserve these cultural heritage sites and prevent them from ever being destroyed again?
Prevent them from ever being destroyed again is something that we cannot predict. We cannot predict such a thing. But to be very, very short with the answer, I believe this conservation should come from communities first. Second, it should be local. supported by Arabs, supported by the West. So basically from the inside to the West, and not the opposite. And we have very bad examples. The Mostar Bridge as example, with the big campaigns of the Aga Khan, the UNESCO, the ICROM, and then it didn't belong to the community. If we don't conserve our heritage, it's an historical chance for us to bring heritage back to community. If we don't rebuild our heritage within the community, from and establish jobs and try to solve a lot of social problems within that, so the community will, finally, that heritage again. I think it's a waste. It's a waste of everything. It's not a matter of money only or a matter of resources. It should be from within. So just to be very, very brief. Yes, Eslimat?
Yeah, just an advice that from now on that we are in this debate, because when we are talking about, the Arab world, not only about conflict,
Yeah.
in order to share the space and life, that it shouldn't be a conflict. Sometimes we are talking about the confrontation between, Muslims, Jewish and Christian, and I think it's also when we are talking about it, I think we cannot forget, because it's also becoming sometimes even more conflict, because sometimes a Jewish person or a Muslim person is not agree but understands somehow a Christian, or and vice versa. But sometimes it's like kind of a new actor which is not new, they're not believers. And I think also when we are talking about this, because it's also a small conflict, so to say, I think we cannot forget from now on that now we are starting the conference, also the non-believers. That sometimes even, the believers, they don't understand at all. Because a Muslim can understand a Christian, like, okay, it's another religion, but sometimes the conflict is coming because they are not able to understand the non-believers.
That's why respect, that's something that I really built a lot of my research upon. Okay, one more question and I need to stop now. Yeah? Yeah?
I think since you're a doctoral student, like you would have done extensive research on this, but then I think mine is more like comments which were there, problems, and then like also the solutions which I felt sharing. You might have done the research on the top level, but then like when we go to the grassroots level, we talk to a person who's coming as an immigrant, we just talk to him. There are certain things which we identify. One is like, we find people who come as immigrants, there is one sense which is there, they have a sense of inferiority complex which is there, where they feel that people have lost everything and they come here into any other country to survive, and like, there is a sense of inferiority complex which leads to a kind of a hatred which is there, majority. The second one I feel is economically weak, and most come as immigrants, and they come on search for, especially in the category of low skilled jobs, which is there, especially where these.
Can I stop you just to understand, where are you talking about them? Like their problems here in Germany, or you're talking about their problems back in Syria before coming, or back in their homeland before they come?
In general.
No, but in general I cannot. I need to figure out the context.
So in general,
I'm a researcher, I can't do this.
Everywhere, because
Yeah.
so in general I'm stating down, but then this is like something which I've noted down, which I'm just sharing down, but then also I have the solution also, like I don't know how it would be for you,
Okay.
being a research student. Then there is like one more thing which I personally feel, where like even Nadine also stated, was there is a sense of wrong interpretation of religion, which again leads to fanaticism or holding on to the wrong interpretation, which is deep down, which I feel so is there. And education being low is some of the factors which is affecting now. Now what I felt like could be the solutions which lead down for the a betterment is something where I felt this is a kind of a solution which begins down, where like there needs to be a political stability from every of the Arab nations, where like the government, because when I stayed across democracy, development, and inside Arab world, it's never been there inside. Democracy could be there, but then like the political instability is constant. There is a coup within a few years which comes down. So I don't know if I'm right or wrong.
Well, in general, you are right. In general, you are right, but every specific situation has its own variables and changes. Well, thank you very much again for being patient with me, and yeah, thank you.